I did a race that was really bad weather, up this summit 3 times. It's starting to drizzle, it's cold, and my future self was like, okay, Liz, you need to stop now and put on long pants and put on your jacket and get your gloves out. My future self was going to thank me for that.
Hi Rockstar, and welcome to episode 305 of Stand Out, Get Noticed. I'm Christina Canters, Communication Skills Specialist. I help ambitious leaders to build unshakable confidence and create more impact at work. Now, in this episode, we are talking about the difference between being busy and being productive, as well as better ways to work. And I'm super excited to be joined by my good friend, Liz Mackevicius. Liz is a leadership coach and a former urban planner who also happens to be an ultra-distance trail runner. And she brings lessons from these massively long and challenging races straight into the way that she helps clients to lead under pressure. Liz shares lots of practical tips and tricks to help you work better, to be more productive, and also to have difficult conversations. So enjoy this one with Liz Mackevicius.
Yes, I was an urban planner for nearly 20 years, and I worked in state, local governments, in consulting. And what I noticed was that there were all these clever, smart people who were really passionate, really committed to making good communities, good places, doing a good job. But we don't really teach people about how to work. We focus on the technical aspects, and there's just not a lot of resources. We don't teach kids at uni how to think and how to manage their mindset. And so I saw a lot of frustrated people. I saw lots of people who struggled to deal with the day-to-day and weren't having the impacts that they knew and I knew that they were capable of.
Where did you learn how to work?
That's a good question. I think I've always thought about how I think. There's a lot of things in there, but how am I thinking at the moment? You were talking just before we started about mindset and how we noticing what's coming up. I think there was something around seeing other people, and I reckon, and I'm curious about alternative views on this, that there's a bit less of that now in workplaces. We're so busy and meetings are online, and I think working from home is amazing. I think flexibility is incredible. But I also think that maybe we see a little bit less of that and we have fewer opportunities to learn about that stuff in the workplace.
Right. It's so interesting how you say we're not taught how to work, because my whole spiel is we're expected to communicate well or expected to know how to present, but we're not taught that at university, at school. It's just expected. And you're taking it a step further and saying we're not taught how to work well.
100%. And, they're sometimes called soft skills. I prefer to call them cognitive skills. And, and universities are great for teaching technical things, technical skills, but we're just not setting ourselves up, our future leaders up really. And, what can often happen, particularly when people are approaching that kind of middle leader stage in their careers, is that it just becomes a slog. So it's just do more and more and more and try and figure it out themselves. And, there's ways that we can overcome that.
So tell me about, what's the alternative? So instead of just I'm slogging, what can someone's career or work environment, look like without the slog?
Well, I think learning some skills about how to manage yourself, how to manage the people around you. I think, communication is definitely part of that. And I was thinking about this before, the most rewarding thing for us, sitting by the pool with umbrellas in our drinks, having a lovely time, that's nice, right? That's okay. But that's okay for a little while. Yeah. But actually what is sustaining for us and what is the most rewarding for us is when we're overcoming a challenge. And, Mihai Csikszentmihalyi wrote this wonderful book, Flow, and he talks about, these on an axis between your skills and the level of challenge. Okay. So we want to be in that sweet spot. We want to be pushed a little bit, otherwise we get bored.
So we want it to be within our skill set or pushing our skill set?
Yeah, just a little bit of a stretch. Like a little bit of a challenge. Like, you know, if we're doing the same stuff over and over that we've done for the last however many years, like that's kind of boring. So we want to be like learning a little bit more. So there's a little bit of a challenge in there, but it's an achievable challenge. So, you know, we're learning a little bit more, and, you know, Daniel Pink talks about this in Intrinsic Motivation. Like one of the key elements of that is mastery. And we love getting better at things. We love seeing our own progress and looking back and going, wow, I couldn't do that 6 months, a year, 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
And suddenly I'm a little bit better at it. And I'm going to draw a parallel here for our shared CrossFit background.
Yes.
Which is like one of the best things about CrossFit and training, right? Is like you're like, oh, I can lift a little bit more this week, and you see your progress, and that's part of what is rewarding for us. So, you know, we want to be in jobs, in careers where we're a little bit challenged, but not in a way that is overwhelming. And I guess, you know, that's a big part of the work that I do, is like helping people kind of navigate into that, and, you know, also helping people manage people so that they get to have that as well. So not just for themselves, but for their teams as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I can mention that Liz and I have known each other, I think we first met like 12 years ago or something. And it was actually at CrossFit, where we were both there being pushed really hard physically. And I know that you also went into, and you still do, like marathon running and trail running. And I know you draw a lot of your own lessons and things that you share with your clients. You draw a lot from that as well. What's been one of the biggest learnings for you from pushing yourself with these, you know, physical, I guess they're mental as well, right? But these like physically challenging challenges, for want of a better word.
Endurance events.
Endurance events.
I think the key thing for me is that we are all capable of more than we think. Like, you start out thinking, I don't know if I can do this, and you just kind of chip away at it a little bit. And I think, you know, maintaining presence and being really in the moment, like we kind of joke sometimes, like left foot, right foot, like you just keep doing that over and over again. But yeah, I think if you had have told me, I don't know, 5 or 6 years ago that I'd be doing the sorts of races that I do now, I probably wouldn't have believed you. But we're all capable of more than we think, and sometimes we just need to have that little challenge, be pushed a little bit, and, you know, it's amazing what we can achieve. So, you know, there's kind of that, but how that can compound over time, and just like little consistent efforts can really add up to a whole new like shift in your baseline, if you like.
I'd love to talk more about that and how it relates to someone in the workplace. But before we do that, I want to ask you, when you say endurance events, give me an example of one. Like, how long is it? Where are you running? Scare me.
Well, yeah. So my favourite events are probably like around 50 to 60 kilometres up in the high country. I've done 100K ones. They take a long time for me anyway. But yeah, like 50 to 60Ks.
How long does 50 to 60Ks take?
Oh, like 10 to 12 hours.
In one go?
Like,
or are you...
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, God.
Yeah, you start early in the morning. You eat a lot. People joke that often these events are eating and drinking competitions with a bit of running thrown in. Because you're out there for a long time, but you're in the most magnificent landscapes. I did a couple earlier this year, like recently over the summer just gone, from from the bottom of Bogong all the way to Hotham, so kind of across the high plains, and other ones up and around the Victorian high country. Like it's spectacular scenery. You're out in nature, in the wilderness, pushing your body.
So what goes through your mind? Let's say you're like, I don't know, 30K into a 60K journey and you're like, oh my God, I'm only halfway. What goes through your mind that gets you through?
Get to the next aid station. Like, what is my job right now? Like it's a lot of almost meditation. Like it's a lot of being very present. What decisions do I have to make now? Like you can't slog out, or you can slog out these races, but you have to make good decisions for your future self. So that's probably one thing. Like,
tell me more about that.
So you are, I did a race a couple of years ago that was really bad weather, and we went up to Mount Feathertop. We didn't actually go to the summit, but anyway, up this summit 3 times, and the third time it was dark again. So it's at night again. It's starting to drizzle. It's cold. And so my future self was like, okay, Liz, you need to stop now and put on your pants, like put on long pants. So, you're in shorts and a t-shirt, put on a layer on top and put on your jacket and get your gloves out. Because your future, like I didn't need them right then, but my future self was going to thank me for that. And so thinking about like, what does my future self need me to do right now? I've been reading this book called Chatter, which I can share the author with you as well. But it's about like this idea of a little bit of distancing, like what would my future self say to me right now? And, if we're drawing this back to a workplace context, what advice would my future self give me right now? I think that's a really helpful mindset to think about. Like if something's a little bit hard, if we're doing a presentation or we've got to have an awkward conversation or we've got to do something that, feels a bit icky, what would my future self say to me right now?
Yeah. Will my future self thank me later? I sometimes think that way when it's like 9 o'clock at night and I'm like, should I watch another Netflix episode or should I go to bed? What's my future self? Is my future self going to thank me when I'm up at 5:30 in the morning when the baby gets up? And usually future self says, you should bloody go to bed.
Yes. See, like, and a little bit of distancing. It's one of my other favorite coaching questions is like, if our roles were reversed or if a friend came to you with this challenge, what advice would you give them? And it just creates a little bit of that distance for us to look at our situation a little bit differently with a different kind of perspective. And I guess the other thing back to the ultra running is like, you just got to get to the next aid station. So it's not like you would never go, well, you try not to like be too overwhelmed at the start of a race or halfway through a race going, oh my God, I'm only halfway. Yeah. Like, okay, I just got to get to the next aid station. What am I going to do there? Like, how am I going to restock? What am I going to eat? Blah, blah, blah. And then you're like, okay, then the next one.
Right.
And so, I think there's parallels for that in the workplace as well. Like, what do we need to do this week? Like, what do we need to do right now? Like, let's not get too overwhelmed with this enormous project and all the rest of it. Like, there's a time and a space for a bit of zooming out and going like, are we actually on the right track here? Are we doing the right things? Asking those big questions. But then it's like getting back into just do the thing that's in front of you right now.
Let's talk about that. So, and I was really excited to talk to you about this because I have been feeling overwhelmed myself in the last couple of weeks. I think a combination of it being Easter. So the weeks have been shortened and I feel like everything is kind of piled up and I find myself unsure of what to do next. And I find myself starting one task and then remembering another one and then jumping to that other one, doing that, and then going back to the other one like that. Is that common? Do you see that in a lot of your clients?
100%. Like that mental load is something that happens all the time. Like we've got so much going on. And I guess, we were talking a little bit earlier about, where we learnt how to work from. And I think, our workplaces today are really different places. Like there's notifications, there's so much information that's thrown at us. And so how we manage that mental load, like whether it's a notebook or like I use an app on my phone and I like tasks, I am just disciplined. I try to be, I'm not perfect, but you just chuck those like, oh yep, I've got to call that person, got to do that. But you put them somewhere so your brain can go, I don't have to remember that, it's somewhere, but like staying focused.
Can we talk about what the difference is between being busy and being productive? Because I'm sure that everyone wants to be more productive, right? No one wants to be more busy. No. So how can we let's start off by, talking about what's the difference between those two?
Yeah, I mean, busy is not necessarily contributing to our big end goal, right? Like, busy is just doing sometimes it can be a bit of a procrastination tool, and I am totally as guilty. This is the next person doing something that doesn't necessarily need to be done because it's a little bit like it's less challenging than like the big thing that does need to be done. So, so busy can like look like all sorts of different things to different people depending on the context. But, it's being in that kind of reactive state where you just like your diary or your to-do list is governed by someone else's crisis, like it's coming from all directions. It's coming from not from what you want or what you want to do. I think if we're feeling if we want to be more productive or impactful, I think there's something around the impact we want to have as well. Like, what does that look like for us each? And, I think we have to do a bit of thinking to figure out what that is and define it a little bit for ourselves before we start figuring out how to get to it.
Yeah. And when you say, having a to-do list that's governed by other people, I think about the days where I'm like, right, I'm going to sit down and I'm going to focus on this important project that I've been wanting to do for ages. And I sit down, but then I go, I'll just quickly check my emails for anything that needs my attention now. Yeah. And we all know how that ends, right? Then the important stuff doesn't get done. But like, what if there's stuff where it's like, this needs, someone needs my response, like today, it's time sensitive stuff. How do we squeeze in the stuff that we actually need to do now versus the important stuff that gets us closer to our end goal?
I think it's about, and you're 100% right, it's not about not doing those things that do demand our attention. We've got to have a pragmatic approach to that. But it's about how we can be a bit more intentional with how we split our time. So, whether it's, batching our emails or maybe setting a limit for looking at our emails just to check, quick scan, is there anything that I need to do today? Otherwise, I'm closing it down and I'm getting stuck in to my project for the day. I like to think about it like if you imagine a triangle with 3 layers and, the bottom one, we spend a bit of time being reactive, and particularly as early career managers, even those of us who run our own business, we do need to react. So it's not that we can do away with that, but it's how we put some parameters around it and go, I'm just going to do it for this amount of time. And it's how we, our mindset that we take into it. Maybe it's from panicking that oh my God, all this stuff, to prioritised response. How are we, delegating, triaging, doing stuff with all of those hundreds of tasks so that we can tick off the ones that need to be done. And, we've all seen the Eisenhower matrix of the important and urgent, and, some stuff probably maybe doesn't need to be done. But for the stuff that does, how do we create, put some parameters around how we spend our time doing that?
What do you find works for you?
Definitely diary, this is what I'm going to do, and planning that out. Because I think separating the what from the how. So if I go, this week my 3 things are X, Y, Z, and this is where I'm scheduling them in, and then getting really clear on what that task is. So if your task is to say, I've got to write this report, that's pretty vague. So how can you be what I'm going to do when I have that time is I'm going to sketch out the structure of the report. I'm going to write the key messages for each of the sections. I'm going to do a list of maps or tables or whatever, and then I'm going to start dot pointing the conclusion. So you're really clear about what it is you're going to do, and so you're not spending that time thinking about what to do. You can just get in and go, okay, well, this is what I'm here to do.
Do you do that planning at the start of the day, or do you do that the night before, or on a Sunday before the week starts?
Yeah, I like to do it on a Sunday, but not everyone shouldn't work on a Sunday. If you don't want to, that's totally fine. But I do like to spend a bit of time thinking about that at the start of the week, but also at the end of the day, so that I know, okay, so what's on for tomorrow? And I think, you were talking before about that mental load and that list. It's if at the end of the day you can go, these are the 3 things I did today, these are the 2 or 3 things tomorrow, and here's all the other random bits and pieces that I've just thought of during the day, and then you can kind of separate that out. You're not taking that home going, oh, there's that thing, oh, you're not ruminating on it as much. So it's almost like a closed down process that I have at the end of the day that I think can be really helpful to kind of make sure that all of those things in your brain have got a home somewhere that's not in your brain anymore.
I love that, rehoming the thoughts somewhere else that's not your brain. You know what I find myself doing? I open up my laptop on a Monday morning and there's all my tabs from Friday still open. And I'm like, oh, there's that thing and there's that thing. And I'm just reminded of all the stuff that I was working on and haven't quite finished on Friday. Yeah. So I really One of my clients, she's a flow and productivity expert, and she has a checklist for like closing out the day and having a shutdown like ritual where it might be you take a walk around the block or you play a song or change your shoes or do something to indicate that your workday's over. And I thought that was really cool as well. And that's something I want to start implementing.
Yeah, I remember this was like a leadership course that I did ages ago that was like on your journey home from the office. So this was obviously way before hybrid working. But like, what is the point on your journey home that signifies you are now your home self? And so maybe it's like, I don't know, getting on the train or getting on or off your bike or something like that. But yeah, there's a point where you go, okay, I am no longer work person, I am home person. It's the same kind of thing. But, you know, for those of us who are lucky enough to work in our spare rooms, it can be helpful to have a little ritual like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Can we talk about purposeful momentum? What is this? And why is it great?
Purposeful momentum is about how we are deliberate with our time, how we create a bit of space to do that important thinking, and, you know, acknowledging that there's also lots of other things that we need to do. We need to coordinate. We do need to react to things. But how do we create a bit of time so that we are reflecting, and, you know, maybe it's at the end of the day or the end of the week or the start, to kind of just be more thoughtful and deliberate about how we're spending our time, because that is what we don't have any more of. You know, our time is very limited. So how do we make the most of it?
So tell me, let's pretend we've got someone who's listening. She manages a team. She has a boss who likes to just put meetings in her calendar, right? At the last minute, just drop them in there. Yeah. What advice do you have for someone whose calendar is pretty much being governed by someone else? And even if they've scheduled in some deep work thinking time, say from 8 a.m. till 10 a.m., but people don't respect those, you know, those boundaries. What advice do you have for someone who's dealing with that kind of workplace?
Well, I think it's, you know, the first step would be to have a conversation about that. You know, maybe their manager is like not able to kind of carve out the time for them to do the strategic thinking, and they're kind of panicking. So I think it is a conversation to start with.
I know you're big on mindset. What kind of mindset shift needs to happen for us to firstly approach this conversation? Because if someone's never had this conversation before, like you said, it's going to be really uncomfortable. We might be setting boundaries for the first time. So tell me firstly what mindset shift needs to happen, and then how might we actually frame up this conversation? Yep.
So I think there's a couple of ways that we can shift our mindset. And the one that I like is to think about really naming our fears. You know, we have this fear, this like grey cloud over here of this conversation. And we're like, oh, I'm just a bit nervous about the conversation, which is totally fair and reasonable. But what is the real fear? Like, what are you scared about? Like, that your manager could arc up and say that, well, that's not good enough, like that it could get really confrontational, or like what are the really specific things? Because naming our fears gives us power over them, because then we can manage and mitigate them. So that would be the first thing, is like to be really specific about like what is our fear about going into that conversation. Yep. What's the worst that could happen? You know, some coaching questions like, what advice would our future self give us about having this conversation?
Are we going to be fired for having this conversation? Highly unlikely. Yeah, or has it happened?
Like, if you're fired for having a conversation like that, then like you probably need to talk to a workplace lawyer or something, you know? Like,
true. It's probably not the best workplace for you.
Yeah, well, and that would be one of my other points as well, is like, you know, that there's obviously, if there's other stuff going on under that where you don't feel like you can have that, even open that conversation, then like, maybe what's going on there a little bit would be something that I would ask. But in terms of your other point around like what practically can you do, I think it's how you frame this conversation to the person you want to have it with. So it's not kind of, if we reverse the roles a bit, it's not like surprising them with it, but maybe it's a bit of forewarning.
Okay.
Hey, Steve, let's just call him Steve. Hey, Steve, I'd love to have a chat with you about how we manage our diaries going forward. I've got a couple of ideas. I'd just love to share them with you. I'll put some time in. So that maybe, Steve, sorry if there are any Steves out there listening. Not that Steve's a bad person, but maybe Steve's got a bit of time to think and reflect and go, I wonder what this person wants to talk to me about. Mm-hmm. And then I think, so it's that initial kind of framing before you're even in the conversation, but then it's how you open it up a little bit at the start and coming at it from the benefits for both of us.
Okay.
I want to help you do your best work, Steve, but it's difficult for me to do that when I'm trying to juggle all of these things. And then the benefits to Steve are obviously that he gets a worker who's able to manage their time a bit better and their energy and attention. And then I think it's, maybe saying something like, let's trial doing this for a couple of weeks. I think, little trials can work really well because it's not like I want you to completely change how you're working forever. In that kind of instance, maybe it's like, okay, let's have a 15-minute chat at the start of the day and you can kind of give me a little download of, the things that are on your mind or, whatever it might be. I think having regular times with your manager, if you don't have that, I think it's really important to have them. And if you're managing people, having a regular time for them to bring you stuff so that you don't get stuck with kind of random text messages all the time.
I'm curious to know, because this sort of popped up for me as you were speaking, have you ever seen this where someone's afraid to share that they are struggling because maybe they've just been promoted, that maybe they're new to the role and they don't want to appear like they can't handle the role? Has that come up for you with your clients?
Oh, 100%. That happens all the time for people. In that instance, it's about what is reasonable here? Again, if our roles were reversed, if a friend was asking me this, what would I say to a friend with this kind of challenge? And look, I said at the very start or when we were talking about running, we're all capable of more than we think, right? So there is definitely an element of you don't have to be perfect at it. Sometimes you just got to give it a go and do it. So I think, we're sophisticated humans. We can hold these two ideas at the same time. I don't want people to be overwhelmed in toxic work environments where they're given too much to do.
Yeah.
But I also think that people are capable of far more than they often give themselves credit for. And so sometimes just kind of jumping in and having a go can work wonders and surprise ourselves.
How do we know the difference between a task or a project or a situation that is a good challenge for us, where it's getting us out of our comfort zone, it's pushing us a little bit to help us grow? How do we tell the difference between that kind of scenario versus actually this is just toxic and overwhelming and making my life worse?
That's an excellent question. And I don't know that I have a straight answer for that. I think you don't want to be challenged all the time. So I think, if you've got some projects maybe that are stretching you a little bit or some aspects of your role that are stretching you a little bit. But if you just feel like you're exhausted at the end of the week constantly, you're physically tired even though you've been sitting down all week, you just kind of I'll get, when this all settles down, then I'll have some time. If that's a recurring thing, particularly if you're working in consulting or something, there are, swings and roundabouts and busy and busier periods. But I think it's the chronicness of it, if that makes sense. If this is just a constant thing, that's not cool.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a really good point in sort of having, it's like having you've got your safe sort of comfortable home that you can return to and then occasionally jump out and do a challenging thing. So it's like you're doing your stuff at work where you're leading your team and doing things that you feel fairly comfortable with, but then occasionally putting your hand up to do a presentation or represent your company at a conference or maybe take on a different type of project, but it's doing those things occasionally outside of your comfort zone but not feeling like you're constantly out of your depth. Because I know I've worked with clients before where they're just I'm just constantly there's no comfort zone whatsoever.
Yeah. And, when we think about like our bodies, like, if we go back to the training analogy, right, like there's stress and recovery. And so we put ourselves under a bit of stress, we do a training session, and then we rest, and then we recover, and then we go again. And like what happens over time is like the line goes up because we're getting fitter, we're getting stronger, we're training. So you can, like, the same kind of thing, as you said, like you need that space to kind of reflect and feel like build your confidence back and do all those things to kind of.
Because isn't it that like your muscles, like when you do like a hard workout, your muscles are actually breaking down, but then they like they get stronger because they reconnect. This is very unscientific explanation. They like
it's all the sports scientists out there.
Definitely not sport. Yeah,
sorry.
But the muscle fibers come together and then they get bigger, but they have to break apart first in order to come back together. And the rest period is when that happens. So I really love that analogy.
Exactly.
So it's like we do this scary thing. Yeah. Yes, it might be anxious for us and freak us out a little bit, but then you come back to your sort of day-to-day safety net where you can just sort of recover, rest, but then you've built up your base level of confidence because you're like, oh, I did that thing. And then that'll help you for the next time you get pushed out of your comfort zone. Oh, I love that so much.
And I think just to add to that, I think that idea that we're feeling a bit nervous and we're a bit like, oh my God, I don't know if like that is a signal to us that we are learning and developing, So if you can reframe that. And there's a wonderful study that's done. He was actually a sports coach, but he had his athletes, so they're part of some team, but they had these big exams coming up. And so they were split into two groups going into the exam. And in like one group was told, they were talked to for like a minute before going into the exam. They said, that anxiety that you're feeling, that's a bit of excitement, and it means that you care about this, and it means that you're switched on and that you're ready to go.
Okay.
And then the other group didn't have that. And you can tell where I'm going with this, is the group that were given that kind of prompt performed way better on the exam because they were acknowledging that that's an okay feeling to have. Like, and you know what it feels like, right? Your heart gets a little, like it's a physiological thing. You feel it in your body. But that's an okay thing to have as long as you don't have that all the time, because that's basically just what burnout is, having that all the time. So we don't want that all the time, but just having that occasionally is a signal to us that we're doing something that's going to push our skill and our capabilities a little bit.
Awesome. I love that. Well, Liz, thank you so much for joining me on the show. Can you share with our listeners where they can find you, and do you have anything exciting out at the moment or coming up that you want to share?
Yes, I do. You can find me at lizmac.com.au. I'm sure Christina put it in the show notes, but yeah, you can find me there. Love to connect with you on LinkedIn as well. And one thing that I am going to have available is a little workbook about how to navigate this react zone, this coordinate zone, and this kind of shape zone. So this idea of a purposeful momentum. And you can jump on my website and download that. You get a couple of emails over the subsequent few weeks with little tips, questions to ask yourself, prompts that will help you kind of reframe the way that you manage yourself at work.
Love it. And I can say that I am on your email list, Liz, and you share really, really well-written and thoughtful emails with tips on leadership and confidence, and also stories from your endurance events as well. So I can kind of experience the endurance events without actually having to do it myself. So I like that. A huge thank you to Liz Mackevicius for joining me on the show this week. You can connect with her at lizmac.com.au. I'll also link to the show notes for this episode and also how you can connect with Liz in the description of this app. Thanks so much for tuning in today. Keep on being awesome, Rockstar. I'm Christina Canters, and this has been Stand Out, Get Noticed.